Hey there, I'm Mr. Terry, I'm a high school history teacher. Welcome back to another History Teacher X video. All right, we're back with another paint explainer video, and as always, this one's blown up too. It's called Every Propaganda Technique Explained in 11 Minutes. Now, if you're coming here, you probably know that I'm a history-focused channel, and I think what would be good for us to do, myself and for you as viewers, is let's look at these propaganda techniques from ways that they've been used in history. So if you see one of these and you can think of a political regime at some time in history that's really used one of these techniques, post it down below and let's see what we can tie historically. All right, the original video is down below. Make sure you're supporting that, and let's see what we can do with this. You know, I'd also like to hear from you. What do you think are the most effective ones that you've seen historically, and I guess even in the present? What are the most effective propaganda techniques? So, you know, academically, like in high school, we usually define propaganda as basically a way to promote a cause. Okay, in one way. Now it can be used honestly, dishonestly. It can be very much like sensationalized. Some of it can use logical fallacies, and if you want to catch up to your logical fallacies on them, there was a paint explainer video, and if you want to see me kind of comment on it, probably have that linked here in the ending credits. So I mean, look at all these that we're going to be looking at. So let's see again, which ones have you seen historically? Which ones have been useful for agendas? All right, so
agenda setting. It's the ability of the news to influence the importance placed on certain topics by public opinion, just by covering them frequently and prominently.
It's true.
Appeal to
you hear something more, the more you hear of something, the more you think it's going to happen. You see that all the time, right? This is where media literacy is so important.
fear. Appeals to fear seek to build support by instilling anxiety and panic in the general population. Appeal to prejudice.
I'm sure we're going to hear some other ones. I was just talking to a friend about kind of the Nazis, and looking at Hermann Goering's testimony at the Nuremberg trials, and you know, they're asking him how was he able to get so many people on his side, and he basically said you tell the people that they are under attack so that they become fearful, and once they're fearful, then they're easy to control and can do things like go out to war and conduct horrible things, make people scared, and they will do your bidding.
Using prejudices to attach value or moral goodness to something. Inevitable victory. Invites those not already on the bandwagon to join those already on the road to certain victory. Those already, or at least partially, on the bandwagon are reassured that staying aboard is their best course of action.
It's like the right side of history argument.
This technique is used to convince the audience that a program is an expression of an irresistible mass movement and that it is in their best interest to join. Beautiful people.
Seem kind of familiar.
This technique is usually used in advertising instead of politics. It's the type of propaganda that deals with famous people or depicts attractive, happy people. This suggests that if people buy a product or follow a certain ideology, they too will be happy or successful.
I mean, look at influencers right now, right? There's not ugly influencers, right? People want to mimic those that are attractive, right?
Big lie. The main belief behind this technique is that people will more easily fall victim to a big lie than to a small one. It could happen because others are at a loss for where to even begin to refute it. Classical conditioning.
That's interesting. It's so big that it's like, must be true. Is that like an emperor's, new clothes kind of thing? No, that's like joining in for a lie to just believing a lie just because everyone else is,
Everyone responds to classical conditioning, which is a behavioral procedure in which a natural stimulus is associated with a neutral stimulus enough times to create the same response by using just the neutral one. Cognitive dissonance. It exploits people's desire to be consistent. For example, if an analyst finds that a certain group of people hate his candidate for senator but love actor A, he could use actor A's endorsement of their candidate to change people's minds. Plain folk. It attempts to convince the audience that the propagandist's position...
the cognitive dissonance thing, it almost seems like it could turn into fallacious arguments, and yeah, it like basically is a fallacy.
Minds. Plain folk. It attempts to convince the audience that the propagandist's positions reflect the common sense of the people. It is designed to win the confidence of the audience by communicating in the common manner and style
like
of the
populism. Would you say that's
a common example of this type of propaganda is a political figure, usually running for a placement in a backyard or shop doing daily routine things.
Yeah.
Cult.
See all the time, right? The politician that's down at the steel mill with their hard hat on, or out on the farm or something like that. I'm a man of the people, right? When like 5 seconds before that photo is taken, somebody gave him some overalls and a hard hat, right? Are we Do we buy all that? You think people buy that a lot? Cult of personality. Woo. We've seen a lot of those in history, haven't we? What do you think are the biggest ones?
Personality. A cult of personality arises when an individual uses mass media to create an idealized and heroic public image, often through unquestioning flattery and praise. The hero personality then advocates the positions that the propagandist desires to promote. Demonizing the enemy.
So cult of personality, right? You become obsessed almost with the personality that way. People that achieve that become very powerful. Like the North Korean regimes, they developed a cult of personality very quickly. I'd say right away with Kim Il-sung, you did that. And that can take a lot of manipulation and stuff to, I think, achieve that kind of thing, especially in the modern age. But it's also maybe even more likely to happen because of how easily you can communicate. So what do you guys think are the other big cults of personality historically? Or presently?
Making individuals
Demonizing
from
the
the
enemy.
opposing side appear to promote. Demonizing the enemy. Making individuals from the opposing side appear to be subhuman, worthless, or immoral.
So one of the times I talk about demonizing the enemy in my classes, World War I was a time that really got to use propaganda because it's, one of those wars that now had mass media, had radio, mass, publishing of newspapers and stuff like that. And with a war like World War I, which took so much propaganda to keep the spirits up, I guess you would say, of the public, demonizing your enemy was a very common one. So you'd hear about news stories or even just see artwork and recruitment posters that just demonized your enemy. You'd see that just makes them look bad. So it's not about promoting your cause as much as it is putting down somebody else's.
Civilization. Propaganda directed at an adversary to erode fighting spirit and encourage surrender or defection. Diktat. This technique hopes to simplify the decision-making process by using images and words to tell the audience exactly what action to take, eliminating any other possible choices.
Yeah, I have these posters in my room. I don't have the one on the right, but I have the I like to show the who's absent one. What's his name? So in the United States, you have Uncle Sam, right? It's just like it's just a command. I want you. And I always wondered does the British guy have a name? Like, on the left there, and it's not like a command, it's just like a question. Who's absent is you. But Uncle Sam is like, no, it's not a question. You're coming. Well, I want you. Go to the nearest recruiting station.
Disinformation.
We
The
gotta have fun
creation
with
or
that in
deletion
class.
of information from public records for the purpose of making a false record of an event or the actions of a person or organization, including faking photographs, videos, and sound recordings, as well as printed documents.
When I did U.S. history, we talk about like yellow journalism when I was teaching more U.S. history, and things like the Spanish-American War would do that. There was this was also early film, and there was these doctored or like set up, acted out like war crimes of like the Spanish just like lining up massacring Cubans and stuff like that. And that was one of the early examples. But yeah, disinformation, I mean, yeah, this has become a problem now because literacy of information and news is very low right now. So we don't know what comes out, and everything's unfiltered and not peer reviewed. So it becomes easy to fall for that.
Divide
Right?
and rule. It means gaining and maintaining power by breaking up larger concentrations of power into pieces that individually
Divide
have
and
less
conquer.
power than the one implementing the strategy.
Think like
Using
Spanish
euphemism.
Empire did that.
An euphemism is a generally innocuous word or expression used in place of one that may be found offensive or suggest something unpleasant. Euphoria.
Okay.
Using an appealing
Big in
event
journalism.
that generates happiness to boost morale, such as a military parade with marching bands and patriotic
People love
messages,
that crap,
or
huh?
making luxury items available. Fear, uncertainty, and doubt. Sometimes abbreviated as FUD, it's an attempt to influence public perception
FUD.
by disseminating negative and dubious false information designed to undermine the credibility of their beliefs. It could be considered a manifestation of the appeal to fear technique.
Fallacy.
Fire hose of falsehood.
What is
It's
this?
a propaganda technique in which a large number of messages are broadcast rapidly, repetitively, and continuously over multiple channels, such as news and social media, without regard for truth or consistency.
So the fire hose, just unheld, is just spraying everywhere. So it's like you just throw these things out as much, and eventually they're going to stick to some people. That's what I'm getting here.
Flag waving. It's an attempt to justify an action on the grounds that doing so will make one more patriotic or in some way benefit a group, country, or idea. Flack, efforts to discredit or cast doubt on the prevailing assumptions. Foot in the door technique, often used by recruiters and salesmen. For example, the perpetrator walks up to the victim and pins a flower or gives a small gift to the victim. The victim says thanks, and now they have incurred a psychological debt to the perpetrator. The person eventually asks for a larger favor. Framing. It happens when, in order to persuade a political audience of one side of an argument or another, the facts are presented through a rhetorical frame that shifts the individual's perception.
Like debate techniques, huh?
Bombarding a political opponent.
Wait, did he just skip gaslighting, or am I tripping?
Individual's perception. Gish Gallop.
Framing.
Bombarding a political opponent with
gaslighting, just because, I mean, that's a word everyone throws around today. Like, you hear it so much. Anyway.
Perception. Gish Gallop. Bombarding a political opponent with obnoxiously complex questions in rapid fire during a debate to make the opponent appear to not know what they are talking about. Glittering.
Oh my gosh, that's so big in debates. Gish Gallop. Word salad. That's what I like to say. Word salad. It makes it eats up time, so you don't just say nothing, but you're really just saying nothing, and it's supposed to make you sound smart. Debate. You know, politicians historically that don't have arguments rely on that and can be very good at that, because you know people will just, you're talking, you must know what you're talking about, kind of thing. Glittering generalities.
Glittering generalities are emotionally appealing words that are applied to a product or idea, but present no concrete argument or analysis. It has the intent of associating the product or idea with an already established feel-good value in the mind of the audience. They ask for approval without examination of the reason. Guilt by association.
Ooh.
This technique is used to persuade a target audience to disapprove of an action or idea by suggesting that the idea is popular among disliked groups. Half-truth.
That one's easy. Yep. You just, because we have this idea that if there's people we don't like, anything that they like must be bad. It's a fallacious argument, but it works. Okay.
A half-truth is a deceptive statement that includes.
So there's so many things I can say, but I don't want to go.
It comes in several forms.
Here.
The statement might be.
I want to get your
true.
feedback.
The statement may be totally true, but only part of the whole truth, or it may utilize some deceptive element, such as improper punctuation.
Go back to this. I kind of talked over it. Plus, I saw teacher in it.
Half-truth. A half-truth is a deceptive statement that includes some element of truth. It comes in several forms. The statement might be partly true, the statement may be totally true, but only part of the whole truth, or it may utilize some deceptive element, such as improper punctuation. Information overload. When an entity floods a certain topic with an enormous amount of information in order to increase the difficulty of understanding an issue and effectively making decisions. It can have the same effect as secrecy. For the first time, I'll actually give you guys a solution to this technique, since the line between news and propaganda is maybe the blurriest it's ever been. This solution is available thanks to our sponsor, Ground News, which is an app and website that lets you see how a single news story is being covered around the world and across the political spectrum. Let me show you how it works. Take a look at this story on North Korea's response to anti-Pyongyang.
I've never been sponsored by them, but
I can see that this story has been covered by 25 sources, including 7 that are left-leaning, while only 2 are right-leaning.
The thing you always ask about something like this, like, because this seems like something to really help with media literacy, right? Especially if you care about it. A lot of people just don't care about media literacy. They want to be in a vacuum, right? An echo chamber. And if you don't, then yeah, you do this. The people always say though, like, well, what do they use? Okay, you have Ground or whatever, or like some of these other fact checking, I guess you would say, type of things out there that, you know, what are they using for they criteria? Are they themselves biased? Or is it just good to get something a little bit closer with that? So anyway, because the idea of something like this sounds, you know, fantastic.
If I scroll down, I can see which sources reported on this story and where they fall on the political spectrum according to ratings from 3 independent news monitoring organizations. If you'd like to learn more about how those ratings are calculated, you can go to the methodology page. On the left side of the page, we can see every article about this topic and compare headlines. For example, this headline might seem more moderate if compared against this other headline. What's great is that next to every headline, you get context about the source, like who owns it, how reliable it is, and if they have a political bias. They even have a blind spot feed, which shows you stories that are disproportionately covered by one side of the political spectrum. Sometimes these stories are important.
Talked about that in propaganda techniques.
If you're stuck in a media bubble, we live in a world where it has become.
And the thing is, if you are a media live in a media echo chamber, you won't even know that those things aren't covered by other people because you're only using the same thing. So you're not going to be able to understand like what actually is reflective of reality.
Incredibly difficult to identify the truth, which is why ground news is such a necessary tool. By comparing coverage, you can start to see a through line of facts. I really think what they're doing is important, and I encourage you to check them out. If you go to ground.news/thepaintexplainer, you'll get 30% off of their Vantage plan, which includes unlimited access to every feature. Or you can try their Pro plan for as little as $1 per month. Your subscription will not only help this channel, you'll also be supporting an independent platform working to make the media landscape more transparent. Thanks again, Ground News, for sponsoring today's video. Intentional vagueness. Saying something so vague as to be meaningless or open to multiple interpretations. In so doing, the vagueness distracts attention from legitimate concerns or questions.
This is when
labeling.
This is when you can see this politically, when you don't want to offend or lose support of a certain part of a fan base, even when you may disagree with them, because you want their support, right? You don't want to lose the support of this one group, fringe group or something. So you are vague enough where they can't disagree with you. You know what I mean?
Describing someone,
big part of getting voters
derogatory
in a democracy.
Phrase. Latitudes of acceptance. In order to make someone agree to something that he doesn't agree with, a more extreme stance on the subject could be first taken, so that when the actual moderate argument is presented, it seems more acceptable.
You just start
Another
with
technique
outlandish
could
things.
consist in moderating one's own position to kind of match the target's beliefs, and then over time, slowly moving to the one that was previously held. Limited hangout. It happens when someone's veil of secrecy is shredded, and he can no longer rely on a phony cover story to misinform the public. He resorts to admitting, sometimes even volunteering, some of the truth while still managing to withhold the key and damaging facts in the case. The public is usually so intrigued by the new information that it never thinks to pursue the matter further. Loaded language. Specific words and phrases with strong emotional implications that are used to influence the audience.
Big in media.
Love bombing. Love bombing is a technique used to recruit someone to a cult or ideology by
Butter 'em
bombarding him
up,
with
baby.
affection in an attempt to isolate him from his prior beliefs, values, and social support.
We kind of looked at love bombing in my class when we were studying the Crusades. If you've studied the Crusades, there's a good chance you may have read Pope Urban's letter, the speech he made. It's basically to the Western Christian world, and he starts off, before he wants the hook and the actual purpose, which is to get people to basically drop what they're doing in their lives and go pretty much sacrifice themselves to go fight in the First Crusade. He starts off with buttering them up by saying how good of Christians everybody is. You guys are awesome. And, I speak for God, but God says that you're all amazing and you're doing well. You butter them up before you ask for the hard thing. You know what I mean?
Milieu control. Controlling someone's communication style and environment through the use of social pressure and group language. An example could be slang that enables group members to identify other members. If the communication style becomes too peculiar, it might result in isolation from the surrounding society. Obfuscation. It happens when a message is intentionally made difficult to understand. Operant conditioning.
Okay.
Operant conditioning is a learning process where behaviors are modified through the association of stimuli with reinforcement or punishment. Oversimplification. Favorable generalities are used to provide simple answers to complex problems. Paltering.
People love that.
Paltering is the active use of selective, truthful statements to mislead. Pensée unique. Enforced reduction of discussion through the use of overly simplistic phrases or arguments. Quotes out of context. Selective editing of quotes that can change meanings. Rationalization.
Oh my gosh, how bad do we see that? Context is so important. It's like, I really started to appreciate when I started teaching like AP classes and looking at documents and that of how important it is to, again, like context for every argument. And anytime you talk about history, everything is within a context, and you will miss so much without context. So that's just studying history, but people use that so much in, politics to mischaracterize, their opponents and bring quotes again out of context. And it's you got to understand it's on, obviously there's responsibility as somebody that's using those quotes, but we got to understand as viewers, people consuming content, that we also have a role in this, okay, of understanding context. That's why we just got to take everything with a grain of salt, especially when it comes to somebody trying to get support for something.
Rationalization is a defense mechanism in which people justify difficult or unacceptable feelings with seemingly logical reasons and explanations. Repetition. This refers to the repetition of a certain symbol or slogan so that the audience remembers it. Scapegoating. Assigning blame to an individual or group,
We see
thus
this in
alleviating
history.
feelings of guilt from responsible parties or distracting attention from the need to fix the problem.
Okay, so we know obviously like the Nazis were great at scapegoating. Who else do you think historically have been the best at scapegoating, and who are those scapegoats? What are some examples?
Semantic satiation.
Share down below.
This technique has the intent of lessening the impact of a certain word by repeating it and using it for trivial accusations. The word becomes more normalized and does not have the same negative impact. Smear campaign.
Is the word, a lot of people say like woke has become that word. It's become so used, it's devoid of all meaning now.
Campaign is an intentional, premeditated effort to undermine an individual's or group's reputation. Testimonials. Testimonials are quotations in or out of context that are cited
I'm
to
blank
support
person and I approve this
third-party
message.
technique exploits the fact that people are more willing to accept an argument from a seemingly independent source of information than from someone with a stake in the outcome.
A lot of time though, those third parties are not neutral parties. They may be a third party, but you gotta, like politically, you gotta follow the money, right? You'll see these think tanks and these PACs and whatever, sources, and you gotta follow the money, right? Of where they actually come from. Maybe third party doesn't, but just being third party doesn't necessarily mean you're unbiased or don't have a motive.
Transfer. It's a technique of projecting positive or negative qualities of a person onto another one to make the second one more acceptable or to discredit him. Unstated assumption. This technique is used when the propaganda concept would seem less credible if explicitly stated. The concept is instead repeatedly assumed or implied. Whataboutism. It's a technique that attempts to discredit an opponent's position by charging them with hypocrisy without directly refuting or disproving their argument.
I hate, oh my God, it's so bad. If you ever see a conversation online or something and somebody responds with what about, just, it's time to move on. The conversation's over. There's the conversation. It means the conversation ran its course. It's over, right? That's when it's over. You don't need to engage anymore.
Misuse of statistics. Reporting statistics in such a way as to unappropriately alter
70%
perceptions
of
on a certain
statistics are
topic.
pulled out of your
Many
butt.
propaganda techniques use logical fallacies or biases to reach their goals. In this video, I've excluded the ones I already talked about in these two videos. Go check them out.
All right, final thoughts. All right, so I'd love to see some discussions down below of historical instances of these propaganda techniques being used historically. Who was famous for using them? Who was successful at it? What are the most common ones that we see? I gave you some examples throughout the video. But what are some other ones that we can add to the conversation? And us, studying history, we can find those examples. I'd love to hear from you guys. So again, another great video from Paint Explainer. I really like this format. It looks like a lot of people are, because every one of these videos just like goes viral. So I think they've been very useful, actually. So I want to keep covering them, and obviously I'll know I should keep covering them if you all keep watching the videos and you're responding to them. That obviously for any topic lets me know that you want to see more of it. All right, with that, we'll see y'all next time. Bye.